Hi friend, I am Ceara from Sweet Spot Parent Coaching. If we haven't met before, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I help sensitive families have more peaceful homes. And before we get started today on our topic, which is understanding anger and disrespect, I'm going to ask you for two favors. The first one is I'd like us all to set an intention that we are going to hold ourselves with the utmost of compassion and love and generosity. Okay, often we give this to other people, we might give this to our children, but it's very rare that we give ourselves this level of generosity. Second thing I'm going to ask you to do, there's a tendency to decide that everything needs to change when there's a problem in our parenting. And I really want us to set a different intention to make very, very small shifts. Okay? Even when it feels like nothing is going right, nothing is working, I want you to remember that there's a lot that's still going right in your parenting right now, whether you can see it or not. So I really want you to set an intention that when you start to feel discouraged or catastrophizing, that you remember we're here to make very, very small shifts, 1% shifts, 2% shifts. Over time, these make really powerful changes. We do not need to change who you are. We don't need to change who your child is. We are just coming back to this truth that very small shifts can have profound impacts. So we'll go ahead and get started, and thank you for holding yourself with self-compassion and love. I really, I admire that, and I appreciate your showing up today with me. So we're going to achieve 3 things today. Number 1, we're going to better understand anger and disrespect. And better understanding these things will shift how we respond. And then we'll talk about what should be your next steps. Okay, this talk is for you if you're the parent of a child or teenager who has any of the following 4 responses when they get upset, angry, in a bad mood. Number 1 is they have a very, very sensitive trigger for that anger. So one minute everything's fine, everybody's happy. The next thing, a small slight has happened, a small, change, and your child has, gone off the rails, right? Really big response, okay? So for kids that have a very, very sensitive trigger for their anger. Number 2 is kids who have a very intense response to that anger. So even very minor problems become really big reactions. Okay, this might look like, the tantrum that goes on and on and on. It might look like, throwing the game because they lost something, okay? The third thing is that you might be here because when your child gets upset, when they're in a bad mood, a negative emotion, there is no kind of moving them through it quicker. They are in it, and there's no distracting them, there's no moving on. If you try to do that, they dig in their heels even more. Okay, so this is for parents whose kids get in a bad mood and there is no kind of talking them out of it. And then 4, it may be that when your kid is upset, when they're, triggered in whatever way, their responses are either dangerous to themselves, dangerous to other people. They're being, physically aggressive. They're using words that are so upsetting that other people are really bothered by it, okay, and feel unsafe. And if this describes your child, there's a really good chance that you feel discouraged, exhausted, frustrated, worried, really down on yourself, okay? And I really want to hold you with compassion. You are not failing. We're going to understand more about how to respond to these kinds of anger and how we can shift this dynamic. So what is anger? What is disrespect? we're going to go and look at our nervous system. So we can think of your child's anger, disrespect, rudeness, meltdown, aggression, all these things as a sign that their nervous system is outside of their window of tolerance. So at any moment, they are able to tolerate a certain amount of stress and pressure and emotional intensity. And then when they go beyond that, we see the signs. We see it as your child's rude tone. We see it as your child flailing their arms. We see it as your child throwing things. So we all have a window of tolerance, and your child's nervous system is constantly taking in information. When they're able to operate inside their tolerance level, they're doing things like saying please and thank you and cooperating. When they're outside of that tolerance level, now they're uncooperative, they're rigid, they're in distress. And so we're looking at the nervous system as the key to understanding, like, why is this kid being rude? Why is this kid digging in their heels? So the nervous system is the key to understanding this. Okay, so we've shifted how we see anger and disrespect to understand that it is a nervous system who is perceiving threat. And again, that threat could be internal, right? I'm tired, I'm hungry. It can be external. This environment is too loud, it's too overstimulating. It can be interrelational. I'm feeling embarrassed, rejected. So now, what are we going to do with that information? We understand better what's going on in our child's nervous system. How are we going to respond better? This is where you can use your compassionate detective resource that I've sent you. And we're going to go through it bit by bit, just seeing how this can be helpful. So the compassionate detective reminds us that the clues to what is going on in this moment started a long time ago. So it encourages us to look what happened before this moment. Okay, and this takes us out of this, like, I need to fix my child's behavior in this moment, this is an emergency. Takes us out of that energy and back to a little bit more reflective energy. Really brings us back to our prefrontal cortex, right? What happened beforehand? And this is all the things that led up to whatever the challenging moment was. So it might be something like, I was really stressed about work. I was running late and feeling a lot of pressure. It might have been, my child didn't sleep very well last night. They're starting to get a cold. It might have been, other people were watching us in the supermarket and I was starting to feel embarrassed. It might be, my kids were up late the last 3 nights. So it encourages us to get curious. What was going on for us, our child, before any of this happened? So the second thing the curious detective encourages us to get curious about is, what is my child feeling and what are they needing? Okay. I always tell parents, like, we are not mind readers. Your job is not to, know everything that your child is feeling and needing, but simply getting curious, moving our brains to this frontal part of our head where we wonder, like what might be going on for them, okay? Simply that shift changes the entire energy from my child is wrong and bad to, like, something's going on for my kid. I don't understand it yet, but I can get more interested in what that might be, okay? So what might my child be feeling? Okay, so this is like, my child might be feeling overwhelmed or embarrassed or rejected, right? And again, you don't even need to be accurate. We're just getting curious, and just that brings you back to this front part of your brain where we're more open, we're more compassionate. We can have creative solutions to problems. Okay, so we're just getting curious. What might your child have been feeling? And then what might they be needing or longing for? And again, You're not a mind reader. Your job is not to know everything your child needs at all times, but simply that shift of like, maybe they were feeling left out and they needed to know that they matter, that they could be included. This is where the skill of emotional validation comes in, like your feelings and needs matter. Doesn't mean that I, as your parent, am going to fix every problem for you. So the idea here is that we're getting curious, what might my child be feeling and needing? And this is not an invitation for you to give your kids candy at 10 o'clock at night because they have this, strong desire for candy. No, but it is a chance to practice the skill of emotional validation, which sounds like, I can see why you love candy. Like, that's so amazing. I love candy too. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could have candy whenever we wanted? I can understand that feeling without satisfying that want and craving, right? So I understand what it's like to want something really badly and not get it. That is disappointing. That is, you feel powerless. You feel maybe weak even at some level, right? That I can't get the things that I want. So we can, share those feelings with our kids. Like, I get it. Your feelings make sense. This is not an invitation to, give your kids all the candy they want whenever they want it. But we're just getting curious. Like, what's that feeling like for your kid? God, that feeling of nothing I get. I never get anything I want, right? Like, it's not true, but that's a feeling your kid is having. So the third thing the detective encourages us to get curious about is ourselves and our own experience. Okay, so we can feel a lot of pressure in our bodies, but it encourages us to move to a space of curiosity about those feelings, about those needs, and really allowing space for us to really feel them and own them. Okay, so in that moment with your child that was so challenging, what were you feeling? Often we can feel judged, right? I was feeling judged because other parents were watching us have this struggle. I was feeling like, other parents were looking down on my parenting. I was feeling powerless, right? Powerlessness is a terrible, honestly a terrible feeling. Our kids struggle with it. And all of us are powerless. We're powerless over other people, right? We wish we had control over other people, our environments, and we don't. And so being human is constantly grappling with that. All the things that I don't have power over that I wish I did. Okay, so I'm longing for a sense of being powerful. So the fourth part of the compassionate detective is to examine what story was my brain starting to tell about this moment with my child. Okay, so our brains make up stories, and that story can be very generous to ourselves, or it can be really self-critical. This is one of the biggest changes that I see with parents as we work together, is kind of the difference between the beginning, where a tough moment with their child kind of gets generalized to, things are terrible, I'm failing, my kid's out of control, whatever the story is. Again, this is a story. Your brain's just making this story up. And later on, kind of a stressful moment becomes something totally different. Well, this was a one-off, this was a challenging moment, and everything's still okay. And so we can be really compassionate with the stories that we tell about ourselves, or we can be really self-critical. Okay, so if the story is my kid and I are disconnected and I've ruined our relationship, right? That's gonna feel way heavier than my kid was worried about their exam at school and they didn't get a good night's sleep last night. So you can feel the difference in the heaviness between, like, I've ruined our entire relationship, right? That feels really oppressive. And my kid was hangry, right? Oh, we can get over one of these challenges. So we're just getting curious. The idea is not to shame your brain for making any ideas, But the idea is to just get curious, like, why is this moment feeling so hard for me? Well, one might be because you're telling a really self-critical story about the whole situation. Number 5 of the compassionate detective is prompting us to think about, is there a more flexible, compassionate way to understand this challenging moment with our child? What happened? This is where we look for an alternate explanation, more compassionate explanation. And this might sound like, I'm a really thoughtful parent who had a tough moment. This might sound like, my kid and I probably need to get to bed earlier tonight. We're taking away the shame and the blame and the judgment, and we're looking at things in a way that feels a little bit lighter, feels a little bit more generous, emotionally generous. So what is a different way to look at this same situation that might be more generous to ourselves and our child? So we finally reached step 6, which is the last step of the compassionate detective. And this asks you, what is the next small step that I could take that might be supportive for me or my child? And I just want to encourage you that we don't need to fix the whole world. We are just taking the next tiny small step. And this might be, I'm going to go to the bathroom for a minute and splash my face with water. It could be, my child and I are going to try to go to bed earlier tonight. We're just taking the next small supportive step. And you don't need to make giant changes. This is all about small shifts. We talked about the 1% change and how over time, very small shifts get us to where we want to go. So what's something supportive and small that you could do in this moment? It might be, I'm going to call a friend tonight. It might be, I'm gonna give my kid a hug and try again tomorrow, right? So we're not changing the world, we're making small steps. So a couple small points about the compassionate detective. The point of this exercise is simply to switch us into curiosity. Why is this challenging? What's going on for my child? What's going on for me? This curiosity puts us in the front of our brain, gets us out of threat where we're kind of more rigid and combative, gets us into kind of creative thinking. I want to encourage you that there's nothing about this exercise that says you need to do all 6 points, right? So maybe just one of these might be helpful. So maybe simply thinking about what happened before this challenging incident with my child, or what's the meaning, what's the story that I'm making of this moment. Maybe that's all you need to do in that moment. Maybe asking yourself what you're feeling and needing lets you know that you're exhausted and you need some rest. And, tomorrow you'll try to take a nap. So again, we're not changing the world. We're doing very small shifts. We don't need to do all 6 steps. If you only remember one of these questions in the moment, like, what might my child be feeling right now? That's terrific. So we're not doing a 20-point checklist. This is not a graduate course in parenting. Like, it's just showing up each day the best that you can. So what next? We've understood a little bit more about the nervous system response, how kids are reacting to internal cues of whether they are safe or under threat, external environmental cues, whether is the environment supportive to me or not, and relational cues, like, are other people, do I matter to other people, am I seen, am I heard? So there's all these different pieces of information that are feeding into our child's nervous system. If you and your child are in a pattern where rudeness, disrespect, big angry outbursts are kind of happening frequently, it is very, very likely that you need more support, if only to help your nervous system. In an ideal world, we're able to help your nervous system calm down, which benefits your child's nervous system, and we're constantly interacting with each other's nervous systems. I would love to support you. This is what I do. I help parents who have more reactive, sensitive kids, who have really big reactions to things. I help you guys break this pattern that isn't working for both of you. Shift, again, these are not, we're making very, very small shifts, but over time, they get you to a very different place, right? So we're going to a different place, a place with more compassion, a place with more connection, where you and your child feel like a team. You guys feel like you're supportive of one another. You don't feel attacked by them all the time. They don't feel attacked by you. And sometimes we need an extra person, an outside person, to help us get to this place. There may be things that are, hard for you to see, and that's my job, is to help you, because I work on these patterns with families all the time, and everyone wants a peaceful home. Everyone wants a connected relationship with their child, one that feels very strong, one where tough moments are simply tough moments. They're not the everyday moments, right? So this is really achievable. I can absolutely be helpful. I'd love to chat with you one-on-one. If this is something that you're interested in, I will, give a link for us to talk, and we'll go from there. But I hope this was helpful. I hope this was supportive, and really kind of understanding that compassion and curiosity can make huge shifts in our parenting and in our child's behavior. So starting with ourselves and how we're looking at things, how we're feeling about things. Again, small shifts, really powerful changes. Thank you so much for being part of this, and I hope it was really, really helpful. Thanks.